Hello, useful content creators, and thank you for joining me this week on the podcast. And this week we don't have any fancy intros, but I do want to give you some reminders. Now, if you're watching this on LinkedIn or Facebook or YouTube, you're going to see the video part of the content. But this content also comes in audio only on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts. All you have to do is search for useful content and you'll find me there. If you're into that, I normally would listen to podcasts while I exercise or while I'm doing some chore. I will listen to it in my ear when I can't look at it. And the audio is just as good as the video, except of course you have no visuals. So if you prefer that one, that is one way you can engage with the podcast as well. And I want to thank you all for being faithful listeners. We're coming up onto the end of season 2 and approaching 50 episodes, which is going to be a great achievement. I have some great people coming up in the future that I'm booking right now, and that's going to be very exciting when we get there. But on this episode of the podcast, we're going to be talking with content coach Lindsay Burgess, and she's going to teach us how to create content that leads to sales without using discovery calls, asking people to buy, or sending any DMs. And if you have ever been on LinkedIn or Instagram or any place that allows you to DM people, you know how DMs can become very, very annoying. So it's going to be a great episode. We get into it, and I hope you enjoy this week's podcast. Let's make useful content. Teaching you to make useful content so that you can build long-term relationships with the people that matter to your business. Hello and welcome to Useful Content. And today we have a brand new teacher in our Useful Content classroom, Lindsay Burgess. Hi, Lindsay.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me on today.
It's good to have you on, Lindsay. And the reason you're on today is because our good friend, Candice, recommended that you be on the show. Normally, when I have a podcast interview or conversation, I send a form, and at the bottom of the form, it says, who would you recommend to be on the show? And she recommended you. So that's a great way to get to meet somebody and to have them in your space talking about important things at the same time.
Yes, I love Candice. She's amazing. It's just incredible how I met her on Instagram and how powerful social media can be. We're in two different parts of the world, and I just feel so blessed and honored to know her. So.
Yeah, she's great. And the episode is yet to be released, but that episode was a great episode as well. So I can't wait to release it. But let's find out more about you. What could you tell the people what you do and how you help your clients make useful content?
Absolutely. So for those who don't know me, I go by, my name is Lindsay, but I go by Content Coach Lindsay on Instagram. And I focus on marketing, as I've been doing it for almost 8 years. Now, actually a little over 8 years, showing my age here, but it's really been interesting because the approach that I take is for service-based business owners to learn how to attract their ready-to-invest clients. So this is someone who's actively already looking for solutions, which makes sales a lot easier. So when I help my clients, it's typically through their content, through their messaging, and through their marketing. So those three components together really help them to create cohesive strategies. So we do that pretty much in a customized way. So I ask them a series of questions. I just ask as many as I can, and some of them might seem irrelevant, but it all comes together in the end so that I get to know more about their core values. And then through that, I create that customized strategy for them that actually fits their needs. That way they're able to attract people a lot easier in less time, and in a way that's aligned. Because again, you don't want to do things that are out of alignment. So that's what I do.
Oh, that's great. Why do you do this for service-based businesses and not like product-based businesses? Is there a reason for that?
I have helped product-based businesses in the past as well, but something about my heart just being pulled toward the service-based industry, because we don't have physical products to actually sell. We're actually selling us. We are the product. Our services, our offer is the product. And I think service-based business owners actually have a little bit more of a tricky challenge because someone could easily just go buy a product online. We see it all the time. People are on Amazon buying products. So it's simple because you know what you're getting. You're getting something physical. But when you're selling something that's sort of invisible in a sense, where, hey, I'm not receiving anything in the mail, I don't get a package coming. That's why I love helping service-based business owners, because I've noticed that they have more of a challenging time being able to market themselves and say, well, here's what you're getting with that. So messaging plays a huge role in that and how you attract those people, as opposed to a product. It's a lot easier, I think. I personally feel like product-based business owners have it a lot easier because people know what they're receiving.
Yeah, some product-based business owners might want to fight you for that, 'cause
They might, but I'm
uh,
telling you, they have it so much better. It all depends on how you market, though. So, but I like both.
yeah, yeah. So you said you help them with their content messaging and marketing too, yeah?
Absolutely.
Okay. And out of that trifecta, which do you think is the most important part to get right, especially when you're starting out?
Yeah. So messaging is number one, in my opinion, because again, a lot of business owners, so many entrepreneurs out there don't really know their core values or don't focus on that somehow in their messaging. Somehow it gets
Mm.
lost because they're taught, oh, just educate and entertain and motivate people and you'll be fine. I've seen that circling around on the internet. And I'm like, oh, this is not a real strategy. This is just different styles of content that you can create. And there's so many other
Yeah.
styles that fall outside of those categories. So, and I don't want to go on a tangent here, but pretty much your messaging is one of the most important and critical components that you could have in your strategy, because if your messaging is unclear, it won't reach your audience in the right way. So that's really something I focus on for the website. With my clients, I look over their messaging, their email marketing campaigns, their Instagram content. I mean, everything has to be cohesive and aligned.
Yeah, I agree with you about messaging, and that is something that we talk about too. And it's not something that people consider, because when they get the guidance as to how to make content, they often get like they make this type of content or that type of content, as opposed to what it is that you're trying to communicate. Was the core thing you're trying to communicate to the people who you want to buy from you? So that's extremely important, and I agree with that. And you yourself kind of went through a transition back in 2021, and something changed in your business. Could you explain to us what happened there and how your business has changed since then?
Yes. So, 2020, that pandemic hit and everyone was at home. So I quit the job that I was working at because, again, I didn't feel like it was aligned. And then for me to get this office job opportunity and quit again, I realized that that just wasn't for me. And as I was healing, doing some therapy, funny story, I hired her from Instagram, by the way. So she inspired me to start my business in 2021, January. She was like, hey, why don't you start your own business? And I'm like, me? I don't even know the first thing. I don't have a business degree. Like, I'm thinking it's this complicated process. And she's like, well, you found me through Instagram. Why not post on there? So that's sort of how it all got started. And then as I started attracting these clients, initially, I was just helping people really with their content strategy and come up with a game plan of different types of content they can post. And as I dove deeper into it, I'm like, oh, wait, this is actually a skill, being able to attract clients. And maybe I can start showing them how to do that, through my content.
Right. And so is that the reason why you kind of have stuck kind of around Instagram? Because I know even though you help your clients get in front of the right audience and you do that in a general sense, it seems that a lot of your emphasis has been on Instagram. Would that be a right thing to say? And is that the reason why? Because you started out there?
Yeah, I started here. It was like my foundation. I did initially get a couple of clients through LinkedIn as well before I fully started marketing myself on Instagram. So that was great, but it was more of training certain teams with marketing. And I was like, I don't really want to do that. And I didn't want to go in that direction. So LinkedIn is a great place too. Some of my clients use Facebook and they take the strategies I share with them. I personally am not a huge Facebook fan. Don't shoot me down, Facebook lovers, but I am not a Facebook fan. But I know that people use it, and my clients have used those strategies as well and done great on Facebook. So I think you can use them interchangeably, Instagram, Facebook. I mean, I wouldn't recommend TikTok. That's a whole different beast there. You have to kind of create strategies way differently if you're going to be on TikTok. But yeah, So I think it really all depends on who you're marketing to. But I love LinkedIn. I think it's a great place to market. And I think you can have success almost anywhere. Pinterest, wherever you want to go, try it and hone in on it. And I feel like I wanted to not be a jack of all trades and a master of none. So that's why I really focused in on Instagram. And I was like, okay, now that I can master this, if I want to expand outside of this, I can, I have more options as well.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So what we're going to talk about is probably going to apply to almost any platform, right? Because today what we want to talk about, and the thing that is most, I guess, interesting to you is creating content that leads to sales without discovery, without discovery calls, without sending DMs, and without asking people to buy. Some would say that is an amazing thing, right? Without having to do any of those things. I know you yourself don't do discovery calls anymore, that you have like paid calls and things of that nature. How is this possible? How can someone get the business they want without essentially reaching out directly?
So for what's funny to me is I asked someone recently, because one of my clients was like, I really want to stop doing all these discovery calls because I'm an introvert and it takes up so much of my time and my energy. And I said, well, then why don't you? And she's like, well, I feel like I have to, like in the industry, like it's a huge practice for us to have these discovery calls. So I said to her, well, if you call Amazon right now and say, I need to speak to Jeff Bezos before I buy this product, do you think you'll get access to him? Right. So the only thing that separates us from any other business owner is really access. So you give people access to your energy based on what you feel you can do. So it's really a choice. And I'm not against discovery calls if that's still something you want to do. Some of my clients still do them. Nothing wrong with them. But personally, I said I need to save time because I had so many discovery calls booked on my calendar at a certain point. And back in 2022, I believe it was, I completely stopped the discovery calls because I had like 12 calls booked. I hopped on all those calls that week. It was a lot. It was exhausting. And to go through all those calls and then make zero sales from those calls. And like, I'm a great closer. Like when I tell you my percentage is really, really high. Usually that never happened to me before, but I knew it was time to make a shift. And I said, if I'm spending all this time, what can I do instead? So I'm so grateful. Like I met my man. He's amazing. He actually has been an entrepreneur for over 10 years. So he said, why don't you have an application process? That would make things simpler and easier for people to apply to work with you. So it's kind of pre-qualifying. And even if you do offer discovery calls, have a pre-qualifying application where people can fill out questions and answers, and you get to know more about, is this person aligned with me first before I start working with them? Because people have complained about nightmare clients in the past. And I thought to myself, well, that's kind of our fault, right? If we don't vet them first and see if they're the right fit for our coaching program or consulting, whatever it is that you offer as a service-based business owner, you want to make sure everything falls into alignment. So, and I use that word so much because it's so true. Like in my life, and it's been relevant throughout my business, that word alignment last year was my word of the year. And I realized I was like, I've been doing things and just getting all these clients, but they're not all sort of on the same page about how things go, about my process, about this system, about the same core values, etc., that we discussed before. So it's on me. That's my role. So I think having that application process makes it way easier. You're also weeding out the people who are just lazy and just aren't really that interested. If you think about it, someone who fills out an application is serious, and they're going to be able to share more about themselves and why they want your help, and they know they need help. So it's a completely different thing as opposed to someone who's like, let's just hop on a call. We'll see. I'm not going to show up. It's a whole completely different energy there. And through that, to answer your question on how I do that process now, as opposed to back in the day, now my executive assistant, even if you don't have one, she emails them, but you could do this as well. She emails them, says, hey, your application was approved or was denied for whatever reason, maybe because it wasn't filled out to completion or there weren't enough details there. So it's giving that person another chance to fill it out again, or they'll say she says your application's approved. So there's like an email template that I have set up so that she can just send that out to each person. And, once it's approved, she lets them know, here's the different plans or here's the different options that you can work with Lindsay at this capacity. Do you want to do this A, B, or C option? And people choose. They reply to her email. They respond. If they don't respond, I tell her not to follow up with anyone because, again, we're not chasing anybody. I have a very attract versus chase mentality. And I think that's a mindset thing where people think I have to chase them down. I have to follow up. Do I really want to work with someone who can't reply to a basic email? No. I don't have that desire, but I hope that they find the coach for them. So again, it's all about how you viewing things sort of from an assertive standpoint, not a passive, life is happening to, or an aggressive, I don't take anybody except for the highest paying, it's sort of that balance of who do I really want to attract and finding who is that person. And I want that person who's going to fill out the application, reply to the email, which option. Once she sends the invoice and the contract, they sign, they're like, I'm in, let's go. And they have the opportunity to ask any questions they want in the email. They have any opportunity for that. Even in my DMs, I send voice memos back and forth with people so that they have all their questions answered before they make a decision. So again, I think it's all about how you choose to do things and just being mindful of what works for me. So that's another alternative. For some people who are kind of like me, I'm drained from all these calls and I don't have time. That's another option.
Right. So the vast majority of your business, according to you, all of your business now is inbound business.
My business, as far as
as far as how clients come to you is inbound. So you don't, and
it's a little bit of outbound somewhat. I don't want to say it's all inbound. Some of it's outbound, but none of it's sending DMs to people and pitching my services. I've never done that. I never have, never will. I'm so anti-pitch your services in the DMs. So
yeah, you know what? Okay, for me, let me just jump into the foray now and say something. For me, I don't like to do that. I am not, I don't know, maybe it's just how my personality is. I don't like to pitch people. And so I could relate to people building a system where people come to you, and I try to put out the highest quality content so that happens. And so things are inbound. When you decided to do that, did you see a drop in people coming to you, or did you see an increase in people coming to you when you did the whole application process and all that stuff?
I believe it's the first 2 months, I actually saw a drop in people, which was interesting because I was like, wait a minute, is this going to work? So I got a little scared, a little nervous. But then I said, you know what, this is what's going to work for me, and I'm going to stand my ground. And again, it's going to take time for new people to come in and transition, or for people to adjust, or sort of be like, oh, she only has an application process. I can't just book a call with her. I can't just have easy access to her. Because when you make yourself available to the world, it's harder to maintain. So what I started doing was I had a game plan. I said, well, let me go live more, because I knew that a lot of my lives, people used to book calls after the lives. That was one of the main ways. That was my lead magnet, were my lives, actually. And I sort of had a little formula going for how I would do it, and it worked every time. So again, when I got sick, I was in the hospital. I said, oh, I need a real lead magnet that can be on autopilot. So that's when I created the 20-minute masterclass, my first one. And it converted very well. So I started again, making those changes necessary between those 2 months where it was kind of slower. And then it picked up. It picked up a lot. I started getting too many applications to the point where I was like, oh, I'm only one person. So when I transitioned, I had a group coaching program, and then I had some one-on-ones that I would do here and there. But again, when you're at capacity, you have to be mindful of that and be ready to make changes.
Excellent. All right, so let's talk a little bit about some of the things surrounding how this actually works, right? So I know that you believe that we all have these unique talents and abilities that God has blessed us with. and there are people who are actually looking for you in particular, and we need to create the content that is specifically for them. And if we create the content for the wrong target market, then things wouldn't work out in the way that it should. Could you go more into that and explain why it's so important to be very focused and targeted in the type of content you create?
Yeah, it's one of the things I wish someone told me sooner, to be honest with you. I know that people say, okay, now you've got these 3 stages of the buyer journey, which is true. You have your awareness stage, you have your, trust building or your authority, which I call nurturing, because it's authority and trust, which are not the same. And if
And I want to talk a bit about that later on. That you could tell us the difference a little bit later. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So so trust and authority. And then there's that phase of like conversion that happens where it's like, okay, I'm ready to go and let me pay. So there's a whole psychology behind that where some of us have missed a step here in the marketing world. And I can say that because I've experienced it myself with clients, and then my clients have experienced that, where sales became so much easier, even organically, while they're posting this content, they're putting it out there. Organically, they're making sales without running ads, because I always tell them, let's test organically first. And then once you've, made sales, now we see which types of posts are resonating with your audience. And then as we do that, and we've created this sort of game plan, there's things that I know work consistently with all of my clients. And then there's some things that need to be more customized. So with that being said, when you have that targeted messaging, it's going to be so much easier to attract that person who's like, that's exactly what I've been looking for. They already spot themselves as soon as they see your content, and they're going to follow you. They're going to watch you maybe for a week, 2 weeks, a month, who knows, 2-3 months. It could be little longer, but most people who are ready to invest like now and already have money saved, I call them the empowered buyer. I made this up because this is the best way for me to describe them, but it's the person who makes empowered decisions. They're not someone who's like, let me think about it. I don't know. Like, they already know they need help. They're already problem aware. They're like, let's go. Let's do this. I'm in. I just want to pay and sign the contract. Let's go. How do I work with you? So most people, it doesn't take them more than 2-3 months to make a choice. And that's something I've noticed in my own content. I've noticed in my own experiences with my clients. One of my clients now, she followed me for like a month and was like, yeah, I'm going to hire her. I just want to make sure that our values align. And when she saw that, she's like, all right, like, I'm in. Like, it didn't take her a long time. So again, people are getting faster results than I did. People are doing it with more ease than I did. And that's my hope, is that entrepreneurs have a better journey where they can see what's working organically. Okay, now I can run ads and scale this thing bigger because I know it works organically. I've already had these posts do well and track my progress. So yeah, targeted messaging is the best thing you can focus on. And speaking to a target audience that's a lot more conscious than the one that's sort of like, I don't know if I need this. Now I'm finding myself convincing somebody that you need me. No, you do. And here's why. Like, who has the time?
Yeah. And I know people, statistically, that's about like 3 to 5% of people who are in that stage, like they're ready to invest, or what you call the empowered buyer. How can you find those people? What these mysterious people that exist out there in the world of your audience? How can you find these people? What do you have to do? Maybe there's something else in addition to content, but what do you have to do to target those exact people?
So yeah, you have to be honest with yourself. Like, who are the people that you love to work with? So for example, in the past, I've asked one of my clients, like, who do you love working with? Like, name their exact professions. And she told me, I love working with realtors, like real estate agents, lawyers, people who have this budget, so that they're not like, oh, I can't afford you. So that was her issue that she kept running into. I said, well, what's your common objection? So everyone has different objections that they receive. So based on your objection, you now need to say, well, how can I make these shifts so that way I'm not attracting that same type of person? So, for example, she mentioned real estate agents. She mentioned people in the finance industry. She mentioned, like I said before, lawyers. She had mentioned someone. Well, start looking through some hashtags. Go like their posts, comment their posts. Show love to their content. It's simple. You're building connections and relationships. It's like a giant networking event where billions of people now, this year, it hit the billions now. How could your client not be here? You know what I mean? It's like people are like, oh, they're not on Instagram, or they're here or they're there. They're everywhere. There's no right or wrong platform. That's a limiting belief all on its own, that, hey, if this is the best platform, all of them work. Everyone I know has gotten clients in different places. So they all work. It's all about now, how do you leverage it? So for me, it was Instagram. For you, it might be something completely different. But as I started building these connections, these relationships with other people who are marketers in my industry, other people outside of my industry, other people who I really wanted to work with, therapists, mindset coaches, whomever, vocal coach wanted to work with me, grief educator worked with me, all these industries, I don't know where they came from, right? But all I know is I was just commenting posts, showing love every time that I show up. So instead of posting content, we have this phrase, post and ghost, right? Instead of posting and ghosting, I feel like it's an invitation. It's a party. Why would you leave the party if you're the guest of honor, you're the person throwing it? So the most important thing you can do is stick around after you post content. Take 20 minutes every time you post. It doesn't have to be a long time. Show some love to other people's content. Why not? Your target audience is out there, but you have to say, who is my target audience first? Who do I want to work with? And if that's a specialized group of people, go to some hashtags, go find them. They're out there. Look up hashtag lawyers, whatever. If you're local, you want to look up hashtag restaurants in NYC. Like if you're a social media manager, you want to work with restaurants, look those up. Restaurants in Jamaica, restaurants at hashtag restaurants in Canada. A woman from Canada found me. I was like, well, how did you find me? You know, I'm in America, you're in Canada. Someone in China found me, became a client. Like, people are finding us in different ways, whether it's someone shared my content. Again, creating shareable content, there's a strategy behind that as well. But again, people are finding you from all different ways. As you're commenting on other people's posts, people find me just from my comment being pinned on another person's account. So that's the outbound part of it. So that's why I said somewhat. No, I don't DM people and say, yeah, you know, here's my service. Like, I've never done that, but I do the outbound of, you know, leaving genuine comments on people's posts and make them like, who is that? Who's that girl? I want to know her. And they click over and they're like, who is she? Who's this stranger, this random person? They're going to look over and be like, oh, okay. They're either going to like my vibe, not like my vibe. And there you go. So I think it's all about being intentional when you show up, and not just with the comments and building a community versus just a bunch of followers. Cause I'm not really about that go viral life. Like, that's not my goal in life. I've gone viral a couple times. It's a little overrated, to be honest, and it stressed me out, and I hope it never happens again. But it's great to build a community of people who genuinely are like, wow, I'm going to stand behind you. I'm going to support what you're doing, whether that's financially, whether it's in the comments, having a conversation, referring me to a podcast. Again, I meet so many people in so many ways because I built this community.
Okay, so let's talk a bit about that, and let's see if we could get into some details as to how that might work and how you can help people do that and what people should do. So someone comes to you, this is a scenario, someone comes to you and they say, okay, I have the service business. Let's just suppose I'm a chiropractor or something like that, right? Come to you and they say, okay, I'm not really getting the type of business I want from my online social media presence, and I really do want to get more leads. I'm looking at trying to get like 20 leads a month or whatever it might be, whatever number they have in their head. And they come to you and they say, well, I'm ready to attract these type of clients, and I'm ready to build my community. Let's go through the process of how you do that for them in just a general sense. What is the first step after they fill out the form, they send it into you, and now, you invoice them? What happens after that? What was the first thing that happens when they have to start this process?
Step one is always like, the first meeting is so fun because I get to know even more about them. So I dive in deeper about their interests, like their vibe, like who they are as a person. I ask them questions that they're like, what does this have to do with anything? But one of the questions, for example, is like, what are hobbies that you do outside of your business? What's your favorite type of music? What are, or whatever genres, you can name 5+. What is this? What is that? And then I ask them, what are your core values? what do you like stand for? What are the services that you offer? What is the pricing? I mean, I ask everything. I need to know all the details before we get started. So that way that's all crystal clear. And then I'm looking through their bio. I'm looking at their highlight section. I'm looking through their actual content, and I'm seeing where there's maybe a disconnect from their audience and seeing the value of what they're providing. So for a chiropractor, for example, I'm going to look at, okay, the first impression. As soon as I go on your page, we look at the bio. So I go through and I create 5 different bio options for all my clients. They look through and they can either approve it or do a combination of them, whatever they like the most. They choose which one they want. And I say, okay, now this is more targeted. Now we're going to focus on this person, your target.
Right.
Now everything has to surround this core message. And obviously you create these pillars, which people are like, what is a content pillar? I don't even know. It's pretty much 3 to 5 topics that you focus on every single time that you show up. So for me, again, it's content, it's messaging, and it's always going to be marketing. Those are like my top 3. And number 4 is sometimes mindset. So I'm always going to talk about those 4 in rotation, but it's mostly those 3 every single time I show up. So as a chiropractor, what are you helping people with exactly? Like, what does that transformation look like? I always ask them, what is your process? Because people forget that people want to know what the process looks like. Are you breaking my back in? Are you, because people get scared. They're like, well, I've been to chiropractors that are ineffective for me. So again, what are those frequently asked questions? What do those reviews say? For example, I am always looking at reviews on behalf of my clients locally. I'm like, here's all the reviews from this person and that person and that person, like other competitors, bad reviews and good reviews. So now those are content ideas that you can now implement, put into your content, address their objections and their common frequently asked questions. And then they feel confident. They're like, yeah, let's go. So are you doing those things? And I have to look. I have to see what are those objections you're getting and how can we address those? Are you addressing those in your content? Are you clear on what you do? Are you having fun? Like, does this content feel a little boring? Or, again, you want your personality to shine. What separates you from everyone else? So it's all about standing out and being that unique person who you were meant to be. And as you stand out, you shockingly will begin to like attract this tribe of people who come together and are like, I like this person. Like, this is my type of person right here. So again, it's not about everybody, but it's about, hey, who needs this? So are you helping people? Some chiropractors actually offer massages as well. So deep tissue massage, they offer realigning your spine or whatever it is. So again, I would have to know, what is it specifically that you're offering? How do you help your clients? What does that process look like? Are the sessions 1 hour? Okay, boom. So now we're creating a reel. Imagine 1 hour of a soothing deep tissue massage after a long day. You're painting a picture for someone, and that's just the words on the reel, and it's showing the camera pans over. It's showing your shop. Like, that's one example of a reel I would create for a chiropractor. So I feel like people have to be more specific in their content, because specificity is the key. If you are not specific in your content, it leaves your audience kind of like, this looks like every other person out there.
I'm intrigued by the bio stuff. Let's just go back to the start when you mentioned the bio stuff. Do you collaborate to create that bio, or do you just look at everything, go away, write the bios, and then come back and say, these are the things that I think, these are the options that I have for you? Or is it like a collaborative process?
It is collaborative in the sense of, like, I don't tell them you have to choose this. Like, I just say to them, well, who is it specifically that you serve? In that first session, as I'm asking all these questions, I'm saying, who are you serving? And I'm getting to know more about them. I'm like, this is not clear in the content. Like, who you help isn't very clear, and how you help isn't clear. When someone shows up, that's your first impression. So what happens is I look through it and I say, okay, how can I change this? So I come up with 5 different options. And again, these are 5 different bios, fully filled out, different click options for the call to action, different everything. So when they look at the wording, they're like, oh, I'm going to use that, but maybe I want the second line from that one. I want a combo of 2 and 5, and I'm going to put those together. And so they actually do that in Google Sheets. So it is collaborative, and they're like, I like this one the best. And they go from there. And sometimes they even get a second opinion. Some people have a business coach as well, which I highly encourage. If you have another coach, that's cool. It's just like, they usually don't specialize in what I do. So I typically will approach it from an angle of, hey, run this by other people. What do you think? But most importantly, your voice is what matters the most. So I always tell them, make sure that your voice is heard. So if the options that I provided you don't like, there's ever an option you don't like, let me know so I can come up with new options. But that's my role. That's how customized I want it to become. Because again, clear messaging and people saying, oh, that's what you do. And then us creating content around that, that's the foundation. So that I can be able to do that. And then we focus on the highlights and then the actual messaging, like throughout the content itself and creating the content. Content kind of comes all the way at the end. Then the website and the email stuff, that comes last. And then now we're looking at your lead magnet. What can we do to improve it?
Right. Okay, great. So they come to you and you can organize what is public facing, their bio. You get them narrow them down to having what exactly the people who they want to focus on and get that corrected. And then you help them with their messaging. So tell me how that messaging part goes.
Yeah. So as we're looking at, okay, now I know who you're targeting. Now all of your content is going to go around that. So I asked them questions. So from the questionnaire that I asked them the first time while we were on the video chat, I'm taking the notes, I'm getting to know them. Now we have this shared Google Sheet and they can click through and see the Q&A at any time, the bio options, highlight, review, where I suggest certain things that they can do to make it more clear or better for their audience. So as we're going through, now we're like, okay, so what's your messaging? Like, what are your core values? What are common popular beliefs in your industry that you do not believe? That's one major thing that people forget. That's a part of your core values. And so if someone doesn't know that, for example, they're going to have a problem and be like, wait, I thought you were helping with this. And you're like, I don't do that. I don't even believe in that. I don't stand behind this. So for example, if someone comes to me and says, well, I want to send out a DM strategy where I DM 100 people every day to get leads, I'm going to say, I'm sorry. Let me refund you immediately. That would save me, like, who has the time and energy? But people know that because I sometimes will put out there in my content that, instead of DMing people 30, whatever, or I'll do something funny like this little raccoon sneaking and in the reel. And I'll say, this is how people look slipping and sliding in my DMs. I did that before and it got so much engagement. A lot of people laughing in the comments, like, I can't stand that. And, it just showed, it was also great for market research to see who doesn't really like that. And most people don't. I think only one person was like, well, I kind of stand behind it. I think it's okay if it's done in a certain way. And I said, well, what way is that? Like, what way do you prefer to be approached and why? So again, our content is an opportunity to have conversations with people. And what does everybody want? I said this in my email blast that goes out every Thursday. I said, what does everyone want? Connection. It's that one word. Every human being, every animal, every living thing that exists wants connection. So how do we connect more? Not how do I teach you something to show that I'm the boss? Like, no, how do I connect with you? How can I connect with you? And yes, we should educate our audience and teach them certain things, but it's how we do it. It's not talking at people, it's speaking with them and having a conversation so that they feel like seen and heard and validated, because that's what everyone really wants, is like to feel like, me too. Oh my goodness, or I never thought of it that way before. I love that perspective shift. So when we create our messaging, how do we create messaging that creates connection and conversation and that builds that community? Because that's what I stand behind. So that's the process and that's what that looks like. So I look at what they've already been doing and I say, okay, how can we shift this? So one example of that is like pain point marketing, which drives me mad. I used to do it myself because I thought that's the way. That's what I was taught.
Well, for those who don't know, what is pain point marketing?
Yes, I should break that down. For those who don't know, it's pretty much where it's the a knife in you type of content. No. So long story short, it's pretty much where you say, here's all of the things that someone struggles with, or here's all of the challenges that your target audience is going through. And now we're going to highlight that and agitate that and put that throughout your content message. That way I can showcase my service as the solution. Problem with that is it's giving toxic X, right? Isn't it giving? I mean, it just feels like, here's why your content sucks. And you're just like, whoa, that's kind of aggressive, like calm it down there. That's not how you create that connection. I think people do it because they're like, well, this is how it gets clicks, and negative headlines, they tested it, right? Negative headlines get more clicks than maybe positive headlines. And I'm not saying everything has to be positive, but again, it's done with intention. Like your heart has to be in the right place when you're doing something.
Yeah.
So I highly encourage people to check their heart, check their intention. Why am I sharing this? Is it to push them to buy from me, or is it to genuinely help someone? And if so, how can I phrase this so that it is genuinely to help someone? And I think ready to invest clients, people who are ready to buy now, they scroll right past. Are you struggling? I don't identify with the word struggle. I know a lot of people who don't either. I used to identify with that word when I was broken on unemployment, trying to start a business. Now I'm like, I don't identify with that word struggle. And I know a lot of people who don't. I took screenshots of people in my comments saying, I don't identify with that word struggle. You're not hooking me with struggle, you know? So I'm like, okay, it's not just me here. There's a mentality behind the types of people you attract who are struggling and can't afford to pay you, are victims and sort of take on that victim mentality versus the individual who's very empowered and is like, I'm already ready. So my question to most people is, if you knew someone was going to buy from you tomorrow, a week from now, what would you say differently in your content? You probably wouldn't even create content the same way.
Right. Yeah. So here's the thing, right, about that. It's like it's how you communicate that message. Like you have to be aware of the things that people are having problems with.
Yes.
The big thing is like it really, for me, it gets to me. Like I once told someone, and they got a big creator. I once told them that they have real disappointed dad energy because of how they were creating content, and basically they were highlighting like all the things that people were doing wrong all the time, and I felt like you just piling on here. You're really just piling on, and what they're saying wasn't essentially wrong. It was right, but the content came across with an air of frustration with the people, as opposed to let me hold your hand and guide you through this. And I picked up on that, and I love the creator. He's still a very big popular creator, especially not so much on LinkedIn, but has a really big podcast and everything. And I was following this person, but as I got to engage with their content more, and I realized that like when you interact with them on this kind of close video content and different things, and I realized that they really have this kind of thing going on where there's just like, you're doing it so wrong, and I can't believe I have to say this again, and I was like, yeah, this is really this is disappointed dad energy here. It's like
Disappointed dad. I love that. I might have to borrow that one.
I called them out on it once, and I called them out on it twice, and they got upset, and they said something which I thought wasn't nice in the comments, and then I was like, okay, I'm done with this person. I just stopped listening to their podcast, and I kind of jettisoned them out of my content cycle, and I found some other people who were doing good stuff, and now I listen to them instead. But I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying from the perspective of the people who focus on all of these things that are, and they pile on. They're gonna make you feel as if you can't do it even before you try. It affects you psychologically. But if you kind of present like, this is possible, and I'm here to help you with this, and let me guide you through, let me give you this thing, and you come alongside to carry the person through with your content, then it's much easier for them to say, okay, I feel like encouraged, and I feel like I'll be safe here with this person. Let me go ahead and do this. And I think that's kind of the big difference when I hear you say it. I don't know if you could identify with that.
Yeah, because it's really just that feeling safe. Like people want to feel safe to share. Someone actually became a client of mine because they said, I see your comment section, how safe people feel to share. And I'm like, I want to be like that. Like, that's why I want to work with you, because I feel like I don't even know why I'm somehow repelling people, or why maybe my message is not working or it's not effective. And I'm like, nobody wants to be called out on their dirty laundry, But if I can do it in a gracious way and say, hey, here are some common misconceptions, or here's a huge thing that in my industry is very popular that I'm like, oh, this is a red flag, if I can call this out and people see that, they're like, oh, there's another way, or you can do this without this. How can we phrase it in a way where it's still helpful to people? Because I agree that you should definitely know your audience's pain points, their problems, their challenges, what they're going through, some of the symptoms of things that they're going through, and then market those symptoms as opposed to the root of the problem, because we know the root of the problem, but marketing the root of the problem isn't always necessarily effective. And I talked about this recently in a reel, and I said, here's some examples down below. If your industry isn't there, let me know. And some people were like, well, here's my industry. I don't know what the symptoms are, the problem is versus the solution and what I provide. So again, we're always providing the solution. I always tell people, this is so much bigger than us. We are world changers. So when you think of it from that perspective, wait, I'm a world changer. I'm not supposed to just be pointing out people's problems. I'm supposed to provide solutions, even if the person never pays me. Someone told me, I watched your free content and it has helped my business thrive so much. Thank you. And I said, wow, like that touched me in ways that money, acknowledgement, any of that stuff, none of that is relevant to me. That touched me in ways that I can't even explain. If your free content isn't helping people, what are you showing up for?
Yeah.
It's not just to call out someone's problem. So yeah, that's sort of my belief behind that. It's okay to be aware of it and it's okay to use it in order to help people. But if you're using it in a way to sort of like shame people, again, are you showing up from a place of, do you want your clients showing up and making decisions to buy from you from a place of guilt, shame, fear, or, oh, well, I got to hurry up, and versus excitement and joy and showing up from a place of love, joy, peace and happiness. There's a whole different energy behind how you show up.
Yeah. I mean, and to be fair, sometimes you do need to crack the whip a bit, to get people going. But for me, I think, especially for my content and hearing you talk about it, it's never you don't want to ever pile on people and make them feel like they're terrible, or you try to encourage them. I think everyone, and this is coming from years of having created content for people and seeing even like one time, this is just one example. One time we did an interview with CEO of a bank in control of billions of dollars per year going through their system. And the guy froze up in front of the camera, like doing a regular interview. And this is somebody who's like running this multi-million-dollar company. And we had to encourage him, because he hadn't done interviews like the way we were doing it, encourage him to how we could talk through it and the topics and all those different things. And of course he got through it and everything. But and then it occurred to me that these are just humans. These are just people, regardless of their role, their title, and they need help like everyone else. And if you create content in a way that helps people, then they'll be more likely to trust you, as opposed to destroying them, And again, and of course, sometimes you have to be like, what you're doing there is not right. It's time to change, and then you tell them, and then you reprimand them, and then you hug them and bring them into the fold.
For me, I feel like people who are ready to buy already know they have a problem. No one needs to tell me like, hey, Linz, maybe lose some more weight. Like, you haven't been consistent at the gym. Like, I know. And that's why I get back right into it. I'm like, okay, maybe I need to do Pilates and I need to hire that instructor again. Or maybe I need to, I know, I think we all know we have problems deep down. And for the ones who aren't problem aware, do I want to target those people? So again, in my messaging, I'm not going to target that person who needs that pep talk and needs that push. Sometimes I do pep talks, but usually it's, if I have to tell them something hard, I'm like, I'm going to give you a loving push real quick, because I want them to know it is a loving push. Like, even though you don't like this conversation or it might make you feel uncomfortable, this can help you. It can help you because I don't want to see people struggle. I don't want to see people suffer or feel like it's impossible. A lot of people have told people this is impossible for you, so they believe it. And so if we can create content that talks to more of those limiting beliefs and these ideas and make that shift, now we're speaking to people who already are like, well, I know I have a problem. I know I need help. Tell me, like, what is the solution? They're solution-oriented people, so they don't want to hear about a bunch of problems. They're like, scroll. They want to hear about what's the solution to my problem.
Yeah.
I don't want to be reprimanded right now. I need someone who's going to say, here's some solutions. And as you're sharing, I know people are like gatekeeping content and like, I gotta hold on to every gem I have. I can't share this because they didn't pay me. I mean, if your free content is kind of bland and dry, do you think they're going to pay you? When people see the content that you're putting out, they're like, I want to see what's in that paid offer. So no, I'm not telling you to share everything in your paid offer, but maybe it's a little different for me because mine is customized. You can't steal something that's customized. So I'm not worried about someone taking something that they learned from my content. That's beautiful. If they go ahead and share that, good. Because now someone else can learn from that, or they're now, maybe their ideas have changed or have shifted completely. And maybe they saw something from a different perspective. We've been taught you have to push people, and this is how. Have we been taught here's how you empower people? Probably not. We see a lot less of that, and how you encourage people, how you show solutions to people, how you speak to people who are already more advanced. So that's why, again, targeting that person who's more conscious, you're not going to have to go through every problem. It's completely different. The people I used to attract when I did the pain point marketing versus the people I attract now, whole different group of people. My clients do boomerangs with me. They pass the vibe check. They've done collaboration posts with me, doing video reviews, everything. Like, I'm super grateful. But again, imagine me still going after an audience that's like, oh, I'm blaming you why I didn't get results, even though I haven't posted all week. And I just thought you were going to do everything for me. It's like, no, why would I do everything for you? This is your role to step up and do it yourself.
Right. All right. Okay, great. So the conversation is going great, but I know we have to, I told you I was getting you out of here in 45 minutes, and now it's like 5 minutes over. So let's talk about one last thing before we wrap all the way up. Let's talk about the difference between building trust and building authority, because I know all the way at the beginning I said we were going to talk about that. So could you please share with us what's the difference between building trust and building authority?
Yes. So trust and authority always get merged in the industry. And even though they both fall underneath kind of nurturing content, they're not the same. And the difference between trust, if you think about it, is I always use this example because people understand it so much better, is think about your mom and then think about a politician. You might trust your mom, but you might not consider her an authority because she might not be a business coach. Like, I would never go to my mom for business advice. I know she would have my back. I know she would never let anything like happen to me. She's like big fighter energy, like would never let a bullet hit me. But as far as business, no, I wouldn't see her as a brand authority when it comes to business. Because again, I'm first generation starting this business. So authority, again, you think of a politician. They have the authority, but you might not trust them. You might be like, this person's a little shady. I don't know. They're lying. So yeah, you have that authority. So again, it's the merge of like your expertise and your experiences. That is that authority. Like, oh, I've been in business for 10 years, or I was able to do XYZ, like, or I was featured in Forbes, or whatever the case is, like whatever it is that you have going on. I was featured in this article, or I was on television, or I have these experiences. Yes, that's brand authority. It's showing also that you know what you're talking about when you share certain advice or tips or solutions to your audience. That's creating brand authority and trust. So there's some merge and there's some overlap there. But trust can also be being vulnerable and sharing your story. Trust can also, in your content, can look like, hey, here's more of those brand values that I was talking about. Or trust is more of calling out something in your industry that's very popular to say that you disagree with. Controversial stuff is building trust, believe it or not. And some people get scared to share their own opinion because they're like, I don't know if I want all the smoke. I'm like, why want all the smoke? Bring it over this way. Because really, it does get the comment section going, but also it shows where you stand. So building trust and brand authority has overlap, and you can do both at the same time while also sometimes doing them separately, if that makes sense.
It does make a whole lot of sense. And I think you need both, obviously, but it's good that you could zero in and know what builds what. So that's excellent. Thanks for sharing that with us, Lindsay. Lindsay, this has been a great conversation, and some of the people may want to know how they can work with you. Could you please tell the people where they can find you online?
Absolutely. So if you want, you can either follow me at Content Coach Lindsay, which is Lindsay is spelled Lindsay. You can also send me a DM. I'm friendly. I don't bite. And also the other option is you can visit my website, www.contentcoachlindsay.com, and you can subscribe to the email list. There should be an option up top where you're able to stay in touch with me every week through emails, through DMs, however you want to stay in touch. And there's also a form as well on my website. So if you want to fill that out too. But yeah, stay in touch. And you can ask any questions you want. I'm always open to conversations. I think people asking questions is a beautiful thing, and it helps me create even better content. So feel free to reach out.
Excellent, excellent. So thank you again, Lindsay, for joining us. And thank you so much, students, for being here on Useful Content Classroom. Dismissed.
Thank you.
And we're clear. And we're clear.
I was like, do I speak? Do I not speak?
That pause it gets a lot of people. It's like, what do I do now? This has been great. I had a lot of different questions I wanted to ask, but the flow of the conversation went in the direction that was good. It was a good direction, so that it turned out to be very, very good.
Okay, great. Okay, good. Because I was like, if you still have questions, like feel free to ask. Like I'm good. Like I want people to get value from it. Like that's my goal. Is like for someone to say, "Wow, I walked away with some gems and I feel more like I have more clarity." So,
absolutely, that happened 100%. And sometimes I overplan sometimes, so it's good that I don't get to some of these questions.
Oh, so that's normal. Okay, good. I was like,
you
can ask another question if you want.
It was so terrible before, but now I've kind of reeled it in terms of how I ask questions. So it gives people room to speak organically. So that's great. Let me just cut the recording off here. Yeah. The Useful Content Podcast is brought to you and produced by Relate Studios. You can see the work we do on our website at relatestudios.com. If you like what you've heard on the podcast today, please follow and come back in 2 weeks for another great episode. And if you want to get more useful content in between that, you can follow me, Juma Bannister, on LinkedIn and on Twitter. We all know it's still true.